Whenever I take a break from the regular episodes, for some reason, I don't know, maybe it's just a me thing, but that's when all the interesting stories really come up. And the problem is, because I'm doing the short topics and, I'm normally on break and it's usually just a main topic, I can't discuss those things. So I usually end up stockpiling them for right now. But now that we mentioned main topics, I might as well just bring up the fact that this episode is going to be about divorce and I'm going to bring up a debate. But before I get to that, I need to bring up something and I have a stockpile of things that I'd like to talk about. So let's see, which one would work? That is 19-year-old Stranger Things star Millie Bobby Brown is now engaged. I don't know, it's supposed to be interesting, but that's like a Hollywood normal thing, late teens and shit getting engaged. So let's see. Okay, this one sounds particularly nice. A Chinese man was recently sentenced to 6 months in jail for scaring off 1,100 of his neighbor's chickens to death. Okay, now this sounds like something that I could definitely discuss.
Get ready for the battle of the sexes.
Alright, I'm actually very curious to kind of find out what this guy was charged with because he scared the chickens to death, so I don't know if this would classify under murder, attempted murder of an animal, if such a thing exists, or maybe just trespassing the neighbor's property. But instead of contemplating all of this, let me just read the snippet of the article that I got. So it says, and I quote, "A Chinese man was sentenced to prison for sneaking onto his neighbor's property to scare thousands of the man's chickens to death as part of a deranged revenge scheme. The man, who is only identified by his surname Gu, was convicted of using a flashlight to terrify the birds, causing them to kill one another on their owner's Hunan province ground," China Daily reported. End quote. Okay. Now, this is a bit of an interesting thing because I tend to think that having the guy convicted for trespassing would have made more sense rather than killing the birds, because the good thing with chickens is in some way you can kind of think of them as like 100% biodegradable, because if the chickens die, you send them to like KFC niggas, they go, they use that shit, they sell it as like, chicken food, and if the eggs die or if the eggs are, broken or anything, you use them, make an omelette here and there. And, you can sell a bunch of that shit, the chicken food, the omelette, and, make some more cash, get some more chickens. It makes perfect sense. But having to go to court over this entire thing to say that this neighbor of yours killed 1,100 of your chicken, and then when the neighbor is being asked for the motive, he's like, oh, it was a revenge plot, blah, blah, blah. He said such and such a thing, so I made sure that I could repay him. Then you're put on the stand, and you're busy talking about how your chicken were killed. And you're like, this man killed all of my chicken. He ruined my poultry business just because I told him that his wife likes my cock. And the entire time, you have to show that clearly whatever revenge was there was unwarranted. And on top of that, because people don't take animal shit that seriously, especially domesticated animals in the court system at least, you find that if this guy would have gone and sold his chicken to the likes of KFC and McDonald's and shit and then decided to press charges, it probably wouldn't have been as bad because, he'd have recovered either all of his money or even at least some of it, so he can go and buy some chicks or buy some hens or, just get some cock to fertilize whatever's there. No pun intended. And eventually, he'd probably have, a poultry size that is near the same amount, if not the same, if not even more. But it seems like the guy just went straight to court, so now he has no money because he spent all of his money on his chicken. I'm not going to say cocks again. And now, instead of compensation, this guy just got his neighbor thrown into prison or, some version of prison for 6 months. And I'm guessing it's probably even minimum security, so the guy will be out in 6 months and this guy will still not have gotten his money back for the chicken. So in other words, what I'm saying is sometimes you have to be smart and debate on what options you're going to take based off of the best, most profitable situation for you. Kind of like what I'm supposed to do with the main topic, of which I probably should have started it in a more typical fashion, where I start by saying, welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who still wonders if the chicken crossed the road, because clearly it saw the flashlight and died. And I know, that's a bit of a dead joke, but so is the chicken. He's a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Battle of the Sexes, our weekly love, sex and relationships show where I get to talk about chicken I get to talk about certain things that do relate to us in real life, like relationships and sex, and sometimes people might feel a certain kind of way about it, but I usually like to come through with some sort of a conclusion. And if you like it, if you don't like it, if you feel like you need to add on to it, then the place to hit me up at is at Breaktime on my side on Facebook or on IG. The DMs are always open. On Twitter, you can slide into my personal DMs, which is at Bagaka the D. I would be more than happy to receive your comments, your feedback, and if there's any particular topics or tweets that you'd want us to discuss on the show, then the place to send that at is on the DMs that I have provided right there. And if you don't remember them, they're usually in the description below. Now, I do want to get into the main topic, but before I do that, I actually want to start with something that is very, very closely related to it. And it was a story that ended up making last weekend's news because it was something that footballers were talking about, which is mostly guys, and a lot of social media was talking about because it was interesting. And I'm talking about the alleged divorce situation that was being experienced by the footballer known as Achraf Hakimi and his wife. Now, for the sake of giving context to those who might not know about it, I'm just going to read the article that I found of it and then I can get into it. So, it says, and I quote, Moroccan international Achraf Hakimi has become a trending topic across the world after his wife discovered he owns nothing despite earning millions of euros with Paris Saint-Germain and the Moroccan national football team. This discovery was made during the ongoing divorce proceedings in court after his wife, Hiba Abouk, filed for divorce and asked for half of all the property and money the footballer owned. To her shock, she discovered that Hakimi had registered all his properties and monies in his mother's name, and whenever he needed anything, he would ask his mother to buy it for him. All his houses, cars, clothes, and jewelry were found to be in his mother's name, and millions in salary were deposited in accounts bearing his mother's name. It was reported that 80% of all that he owns is registered in his mother's name. The couple began dating in 2018, married in 2020, and have 2 sons. She filed for divorce around March 2023. End quote. Alright, now here's the thing. I first of all want to shout out the real MVP in this entire story, which is his mom. But as I'm busy making that shout out, we need to get this guy his crown. And we also need to recognize this guy for who he is.
City boy! City boy!
And we need to goat the dude, because honestly, for all the dudes that have suffered with divorces, both young and old, rich and poor, I don't think there's anyone who properly planned himself the way this dude did. Like, honestly, I cannot think of someone who planned for a scenario so well like this guy did, probably save for the whole Drake situation where he would put hot sauce inside the condom after, using it and nutting inside. But I already discussed that one. Because here's the thing, I actually looked through a couple of the comments and I went and read a bit of the story, and apparently the woman says that it's not about the money, or apparently he has a rape allegation, and the woman was like, I don't want this shit and I want to bounce. And I get it, fine, maybe that's true, but the way she was gunning for his money, oh no, you can't really say that it's just the rape and you're trying to find a way to get out. Because yes, she is a Spanish actress and yes, she does make money, blah blah blah, but with the way she was gunning for dude's cash, I can't say that she was leaving just because of the reputational damage. Or maybe even the infidelity, because I tend to think that if there was infidelity, she probably knew about it. But all that put aside, this isn't us pretty much shaming her because she's in a divorce, because I guess that's what some people are trying to peddle around. This is us guys recognizing that the dude clearly outsmarted the game here. Like, dude pretty much played his cards, and he played them so well that even billionaires themselves should probably take notes for this guy, because I kid you the fuck not, there's actually a very recent story from like the end of March, this was like 2 weeks ago and I saw it, where a hedge fund titan, a hedge fund billionaire known as Israel Englander, pretty much ended up having to pay $1 billion to his ex-wife who left him for a woman. Like, dude pretty much did way better than a billionaire here. And he's just a footballer, and those guys are usually perceived to not be that smart. Hey, if anything, I feel like this guy deserves his flowers. Call him a city boy, call him a goat. We need to respect this dude and ask him for the rule book, so that we as young men get to learn how it is that we can protect ourselves and protect our wealth in the likely event of a divorce. Because the most interesting part about this, and I'm not entirely sure if this is verified or not, but I have heard this supposedly traveling around, this guy pretty much threw in the Uno reverse card because they're supposed to be splitting her wealth now so that she can give some money to him. Like, tell me that this nigga isn't a goat. Just tell me he's not. You kind of think about it. There's only like one other famous situation where you've heard of the babe having to give the dude money. But anyways, we actually do need to go into debating this whole divorce thing. So I'm gonna stop kind of glorifying some of this shit and just move things along so that we can move on to our main topic of today, which we are going to do right now. Now, not too long ago, while I was just busy scrolling online, I actually found a very interesting statement that was sort of thrown on the whole true or false situation. And it was something that seemed to interest me quite a bit, not because of the whole Hakimi thing, because that came later on, but essentially considering with a lot of the divorces that are happening right now, I actually saw this question and I found it to be particularly interesting. So the question reads, and I quote, "Less divorce would happen if divorce didn't rip everything away from men. True or false?" Now, I actually kind of had to stop and think about this for a little bit because on one end you're like, yeah, it probably wouldn't, but on another end you're like, would it really? And to be very honest, I actually had to stop and think about this very critically for a bit of a while before I came through with some sort of a conclusion on this. And sort of trying to understand whether it could happen, and if it could happen, what the outcome would be. And normally, I'd be expected to go all the way till the end, so I give the answer, but honestly, I don't see why I should. But at least I'm gonna explain how I ended up with that answer. So I'm just gonna tell you, if such a thing was to happen, if divorce was, sort of equaled and, it wasn't stripping everything away from men, would divorces reduce? I don't think they would. If anything, they might either be the same or they might actually even be a little bit more. And I'm going to explain that right now because this is something that you kind of have to think about, not from a general perspective, but almost critically enough and, sort of with a bit of understanding on how people will behave. Because there's a lot that we've been told about divorce, and especially for a lot of us guys, we've been given a lot of information that makes divorce such a bad thing for men, which I'm not saying that it's not, but at the same time, it's been thrown to guys and we've been fed all of these stats so much that a lot of us are even afraid of getting into a commitment that can actually lead to marriage or even just marriage itself. So let's start by at least throwing around the stats that we have on divorce. Now, I think it's 50% of marriages usually end up in divorce. So there's usually a 50% chance, if not over 50% of marriages end up in divorce. I think that's a US statistic. So it could be the same around a certain couple of places in the world, or, it could just be a US thing and it could be lower in some places, probably higher in others. But, at least that's one statistic that's used a lot. In 50% of the divorces, it's usually money that's involved and, financial reasons. That's listed as one of the primary reasons in about 50% of them. And, I'm not sure if that one's a US one, but I think it is. So, it could apply to the Western world. It could apply to a lot of other parts of the world, but, it's a statistic, so we might as well take it as is. And in about 70 to 80% of the divorces, the person who initiates them is the woman. So I guess maybe if you think about it like that, considering that the babes are the ones that are always the ones, going and initiating the divorce, then probably leveling things out for guys, or at least ensuring that they don't lose everything, probably might work in their favor. And, probably you're making sense. And I guess probably in about 80-90% of those cases, whenever there's spousal support or alimony or child support that's supposed to be paid, it's usually paid to the woman. There's only like very, very few cases where the man ends up receiving some sort of spousal support. And you kind of think about it, this sort of stats, like when you listen to all of these stats and you're a young man, the thought of marriage actually does seem like a pretty bleak thing for a lot of guys. It doesn't seem like such a great option because one, you're a coin toss away from ending things and losing possibly everything that is related to your wealth as a man the moment you decide to get married. And right now it seems like way more of a gamble for a lot of people as opposed to others, and I can totally understand that. But when you kind of think about it, this doesn't entirely say a lot about a lot of things, Because when you think about it, yes, 50% of marriages or over 50% of marriages do end up in divorce. Okay, so there's a pretty good chance that you could be on the positive 50% that doesn't end on divorce. And when you're looking at financial reasons, I don't think that's always listed as the main reason. It could just be a case of, in a similar 50% of those reasons, it could be financially related. But the whole women initiating it, I can get why it's harder for a man to go and then initiate a divorce. Because by the time a man is going for a divorce, he's probably very, very comfortable with losing whatever's there. And he really, really wants to move on with someone else. But because he can't be allowed to be polygamous and he's already legally married to someone, he'll probably want to get out of it officially as per, the legal system, so that he can officially marry another woman. And I think that one makes a lot more sense for a lot of guys, because only at that point can you at least be like, all right, it's fine, I don't mind losing a bit of this wealth or a bit of this money, provided we can just settle it out of court and we can just agree on how much I can be giving you so that we can annul this marriage of ours. And, hopefully your woman isn't some, really, really toxic, manipulative bitch that'll probably mess shit up for you. But all in all, that one kind of at least makes sense. But now that I've sort of mentioned all of that and what those beliefs can sort of say and what they seem to mean in some case, now let's look at what an equal loss opportunity is, or at least where men don't really stand to lose much, especially in the name of wealth, the moment they get divorced. What would that situation look like? So essentially, if this guy, or let's assume that guy A is married to woman B and they've been together for a bit of a while, they probably have kids, and then eventually he decides he's tired, the relationship has been on the rocks, things are very shitty between the two of them, and he decides that he's pretty much done with the relationship. He doesn't have to stay in. So technically it's entirely up to him to just choose to get out, and probably they might spend a bunch of money going to court and everything, but for the most part, if he wants to be completely done with a woman, he can. They don't have to, just separate. They can be officially done and not be legally joined to each other at any given point whatsoever. And it makes sense. You won't have her name on anything, so she won't have to meet up with you to sign any documents and shit, and that makes a fuck ton of sense. And in some ways, that would actually make it easier for a lot of guys to not have to try and force a relationship with some of their ex-spouses, because sometimes dudes go and they marry before they get any post-nut clarity. I'm just saying, because I'm not saying that, no sex till marriage is a bad thing or blah 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 or anything of that sort. No, it's just that there's some guys who will decide to marry a woman because they are drawn towards the woman's beauty or the woman's personality or just the attractiveness. There was just something that attracted them to this woman, and it was probably visual. It could have been the face, the tits, or the ass, or a combination of all of the above. And the fact that she was just okay in terms of treating you, that the bare minimum seemed like a really, really good deal. And you simped for a little bit and you got married and shit like that. No prenups were thrown in. But after a while you realize, I married this babe because yes, probably she had a big ass, but now I have kids and she can't help them with homework. And I totally understand. Sometimes you marry someone and you're like, what the fuck did I just do? And that's like 2-3 years into the entire thing. So now you feel that you're probably done with the babe. So you're like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I know this other babe. She's my co-worker. She's actually my subordinate, but she's very respectful. She's very nice. And she seems like she's really attracted to me just the same way I'm attracted to her. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to go divorce my wife and then I'm going to be with this babe. All right, fine. Cool. So you decide to go, you initiate the divorce, you go through with it, and then you go for this babe. Now, you think about that scenario, and I even forgot to think about the part where this guy can now technically marry one babe, and because as a man, you being attached to another babe increases your mate value, you can use it to get the next babe. And then you kind of think about it, if you get tired of the babe, all you have to do is divorce her. It might be expensive, but if money isn't an option and the lawyers are being paid for under the company expense and you own the company and shit, then it probably wouldn't be too big of an issue for you. So now that I've thought about it like that, that kind of brings me now to the conclusion that I had, which I stated earlier, it might actually be the same exact divorce rate, if not even higher, because now guys who are just manipulative, guys who are toxic, guys who do not know how to stay in a committed relationship through thick and thin will pretty much be deciding to leave their babes at any sign of a problematic situation. And if they have money, it'll be easier for them to do that. Because when you think about it, for a lot of guys, they will be in shit relationships. They will be in relationships where there is no love, where they are feeling nothing for the babe, where they are pretty much in a stressful situation, where going back home is such a pain because of the noise, the issues, the kind of treatment that you'll get from your babe. So you'd much rather go through a bar or go through a club or even go through another homie's place and chill for a bit before you go home just to sleep. Hell, some people will even continue working all the way into the night so that when they go home, it's literally just going home, checking into bed. Because they are in loveless relationships, they do not enjoy the partner that they have with them, and it's not even a case of them being able to tolerate each other. So in a situation like that, having a situation of divorce like this where he doesn't get to lose his shit, he'll go for that very easily because he doesn't have to sit around and stand most of the garbage that he is receiving. Yes, maybe dealing with the whole, like the kids and custody and shit might be an issue, but he doesn't have to deal with most of that shit. And also, a lot of times you find that those guys might be attracted to like the secretary or just some other babe that they probably wish that they had a thing with. And this is their opportunity to not have to stay in a relationship that they don't like while they can have a relationship with someone that they do like. So it just seems to work in their favor. So when you kind of think about it, guys would probably be now trying to divorce a hell of a lot more than they probably would right now. Because right now they have a fuck ton to lose, so they're not gonna try and do it. The babes have a lot less to lose, at least, monetarily speaking, so they can probably do it a little bit more. Hell, they even have some to gain. So if you remove a big chunk of the reason why men aren't going for divorce right now, it's not like the babes will divorce any less, or at least I don't think it will drop by that much, but the divorces that have been initiated by men will just shoot up dramatically. And to kind of conclude all of this, let me just say this. If you think that leveling the playing field by reducing the consequences of divorce on men will make the number of divorces go down on both ends, then you're probably quite wrong. Because at the end of the day, those inhibitions are the ones that make people less likely to divorce. So instead of reducing the consequences or, the fact that a man can lose just about everything he's ever had by divorce, I think maybe if you want to reduce the rates of divorce, just increase the number of problems that will occur to the woman should she go ahead and divorce. Make it such that if he loses everything, she loses everything as well. At the end of the day, women will choose to divorce a hell of a lot less. Not unless if she has another dude who has more money that's willing to fund the entire thing. But that sort of rarely happens. But still, bottom line is, women will probably be a lot less inclined to approach the idea of divorce if they know that the losses that they'll incur for that same divorce will be a hell of a lot more than what it is that they gain afterwards. Although, then again, considering that there are some babes that don't care, they just want to ruin a nigga's life, maybe I might be wrong about this shit. I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, on Facebook, it is at Breaktime, on my side on Twitter. It is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.